Hello. I've been meaning to make a video on an earthly issue for a while, and since I've been associated with economics for so long, all things that are connected to economics in some way or the other affect me. Um, we've been hearing about crisis in Sri Lanka, our neighbor, India's neighbor, and India knows what economic crisis is. We've been through that. So it's not that that I would be talking about it from a vantage point where I'm unaffected talking about it objectively. I think I would be more empathetic, more practical about things because, as I said, we've gone through it. So, just talking about things would make things 10 times easier. Not that YouTubers or anybody else would have more brains that people in authority in Sri Lanka or any island nation that's going through an economic crisis would not have thought about already. They would have had a much long sighted vision about things, but just as I said, I don't know whether I said that or not. Talking about things make things very light, and things seem to be more in control. So even when you don't have anybody to share your problems with, just speak about them loudly. And I have experienced it firsthand. And while you're in the process of talking about things, you think of solutions. If nothing else, you feel like that. Oh, is this what was bothering me for so long? I can let it pass. So yeah, I have written certain points. If you don't see it, it's all right. If I see it, it's going to be a great deal. So what exactly happened in Sri Lanka is something that usually happens with all countries that are facing some kind of an economic crisis. How did it all come to fore or on the surface when India? I just said India. When Sri Lanka couldn't pay back its uh, its debts that it had taken from IMF. IMF is the International Monetary Fund that we all know about. They extend loans to countries in crisis, and that's how people talk about their problems. That's usually the turning point. When they're not able to pay back their debts, that's the time when they are left with no option than to address people to talk about it publicly. So that's exactly what happens with Sri Lanka. And why couldn't they pay back their debts? Because there was shortage of foreign exchange, because of the corona times. They could not they Their economy was badly hit. And why was it badly hit? We'll just talk about it in a minute. uh, it had serious shortage of foreign exchange because whatever money they had, they were paying in imports of fuel. And the fuel prices has also risen in recent times. And there was fall in tourism revenues. So this is precisely the reason. No, this is one of the reasons why it had come to the point it had come to. And then, of course, Sri Lanka is a small nation. It has its citizens in every part of the globe. They weren't sending uh, their country the money that was required, despite the authorities making a plea that some money should be sent back home. And the reason why they weren't sending the money was, as it is understood, is that during the tsunami times, that is 2004, when Sri Lanka was badly hit, a lot of money that the expatriates had sent to Sri Lanka was siphoned off in personal accounts of certain corrupt people, corrupt officials, to the extent that the prime minister had to give back the money, because this corruption this corruption was uh, this it came to it was exposed. So this is long and short of it. It could not, Sri Lanka could not pay back its debts. It could not pay back its debts because it did not have enough foreign currency. It did not have its enough foreign currency because it did not earn um, in the last 2 3 years the amount that was required. It hadn't earned because the fuel prices had led to increase in the import bill, and the income had suffered because tourism was badly affected during COVID times, and a lot of different other reasons. There was economic mismanagement. There were tax cuts because of Corona, etc., which was a bad policy according to many, and um, that led to further cut down of the revenues. And then expatriates also did not send money, and so on. Yeah. So Sri Lanka is not just the only country. All countries have suffered, but it's harder for island nations. It's n times harder for island nations. Contrary to what many people believe, small land, small population, so it must be easy for such people. No, it is not, and we'll come to that. There are certain common points in all those island nations. Many of them are going through economic crisis post COVID times, and that's because these are few points. First is the underlying pattern with the island countries is that most of their economy is based on tourism. And in calamities or in times like pandemic, obviously tourism industry suffers quite a bit. Second thing, it depends a lot on agriculture and service sector because a lot of many people are involved in hospitality and such industries. But one thing that's really missing is manufacturing. And it has been, where am I going? Yes, manufacturing. And it has been found, and I've spoken in my previous videos, and if you're remotely connected to economics, you must be knowing this already. There's no medicine like manufacturing because it has the maximum multipliers effect. Multipliers effect in the sense that so many people are connected to it. There's some money uh, that is pumped into manufacturing would lead to a lot of money creation. That is one, a certain amount of money would go into different directions because there's so many linkages. So maximum multipliers effect is, can be seen in manufacturing. And then of course there are other industries like uh, infrastructure, different kinds of infrastructure building. So that is one point. Too much dependence on foreign currency that comes via tourism, that comes via service industry, and dependence on agriculture, and poor development of manufacturing. And therefore when money is less, too many people wanted less money coming in, what you have are civil wars. Because you must have always noticed civil wars may be triggered due to any reason, but the underlying cause is always lack of resources. All right, so there's political unrest as well. So this is about long and short of it. There's so many different causes, which I'm just discussing the very major ones. I have used a pen that is so light that I won't be able to see. Anyways, I will have to simply, yeah. So why do we say that it's even harder for island nations? It's harder because there's a lack of scale economies. Big nations have a lot of scale economies, large scale industries, and it has been found through various researches. It's all on net. You can find there are researches done how small countries suffer because they are not able to make use of scale economies. Then there's lack of natural resources. There's only so much resources that you can get from a small place. You are not self sufficient. So there you are dependent, you're compelled to be dependent on other nations. And then transport is costlier because the a lot of transportation and export uh, is done through water, is done through the via sea, which is a costly affair. So that's transport is costlier, so that increases the cost of production. And then yeah, dependence on foreign capital and technology, because not many people are there, the population is less, not many people are there to do actual research work. There's not many lot of population, and rich population is not there to have, so that sufficient amount of private capital is available. And there's so many industries that are run by state. So there's a crowding out effect also. Crowding out effect is this lot of major major network and money with the state, that is administration or the government, and the private individuals don't have a lot of latitude to work with and in. And what is written? Wow. No, no, this is part of something else. So this is there was this famous quote that that those small nations that are economically self-sufficient are not because they are small, but in spite of it. And the same goes for families also. The same goes for families also. All those families that are small, they don't have a lot of members. It's not that they are you are not necessarily rich because of that, but in spite of that. Because because if you have a lot of members, each one would pool in some money. Problem comes when there are a lot of members in the family but only one earns or two people earn. If everyone is earning, if everyone has a little bit of water to pool in the big pool, to put it in the big if to put it all together, you will have liquidity. So yeah, so things that I found while going through it was all these wait a minute, all these countries that are island nations, it's not that they don't know that manufacturing is great for them. They are not able to they are not able to realize this, convert this opportunity into reality because of the factors that I just spoke about. Cost of production is high, economies of scale is absent or very limited, natural resources are less, too much dependence on foreign technology. And technology, when it is not homemade or not home created or not home invented, it's not a perfect fit. And for an imperfect fit, a, s- a small nation has to spend so much so that they can buy that imperfect technology from bigger nations. Bigger nations that talk about equality all the time, it's not that they are ready to dispense with the technology that they have come up with easily to the small nations. They don't. They, no matter how much they talk about charity and helping each other, equal world, they sell their technology at a very high price. In fact, there are certain people, and I'm not saying it on my own because I haven't studied this subject quite a bit. It's just they said that how come How come all those nations that don't exactly work according to the dictums of big nations face civil wars? So what is it about them? Why if they are not into anybody's business, they're minding their own business, still if they are not in good books of big nations, they always they always tend to have political unrest for no good things. There are uh, there are there's a lot of problems in that country out of the blue. There's there's some big thing that happens uh, that creates speed breakers. Anyway, so yeah, so all those people who are have a small nation, or anyone who's an individual, or who wants to earn, they have n number of more problems, because it's sometimes believed, and they people even say you're just to people who are single, you're alone, and it must be so much easier for them. It's easy and hard at the same time. It's hard, it's easy because you don't have to take care of a lot of people. Responsibility is can be subtracted, but a lot of other responsibilities there. It's not that people who stay alone, they don't have to eat, they don't have to clean, they don't have to do things. Everything goes, and there's no sharing of responsibility. Same with the nations, small nations. Same with small nations, scale economies is absent. So what they have to do is they have to first of all diversify their economy. So individuals also need to diversify their economy. If they, what if they lose their job, everything is gone. So make sure the source of income is at least more than one, three, four preferably, three, four different states. And then if you are alone and you can't have a big manufacturing industry, and if you're a small nation, you can't have a big manufacturing industry. What you could do is start small. And how you could start small and still earn? By creating a niche market for you, something that only you can create, not others can't, and that can be based on skills. So the biggest wealth that small nation have is their population. Let them be very skilled, let them be very highly educated. Make sure that you educate women, because it has been found through different studies that the multipliers effect of educating a woman is 4 times higher than educating a man. Educating a man or woman, it's equally important, but then men seem, it has been found that women are more concerned about keeping their children also educated. They would not let them drop out. And there are studies done on it. I think it was Dimension of Women Empowerment by Sinha. If I can find a link, I'll post it in the description. So yes, your biggest wealth is your own skill. If you can't start big, create a niche market for yourself that only you could make, you can create. Second thing is there has to, okay, I've already spoken about this. Then infrastructure, build on the infrastructure, because it's the second best option. If you can't build on manufacturing, there's a lot of there's multipliers effect in that also. Plus it cuts the cost of, cuts the cost of production. There's one thing that I haven't written here, but I wanted to talk about. All those nations that can't pay their loans, they often go for restructuring of their loans. They ask for restructuring of their loans from IMF, and IMF agrees, and there are certain conditions that are imposed on the country, whichever is the borrowing country. It always happens so. And what are the conditions that they'll make changes in their economy as per IMF? Joseph Stiglitz, if I'm pronouncing his name right. He's a Nobel laureate as well. He's spoken about, just like, just like how doctors cannot have one prescription for every patient. You can't be having one prescription for economic prescription for all small nations in crisis. But that's exactly what's happening, according to Joseph Stiglitz and many who observe things. It's the same thing. Devalue your currency and cut your domestic debt and so on. See, what happens is whenever a country is facing recession, it self corrects itself. All you have to do is, all you have to do is the cause of what is recession? Recession is going back, right? Going back on what? Output. So there was a certain amount of output, now it has come down. So you have gone back to the older level of output, and there could be any reason for it. Either there's shortage in supply or shortage in demand, whatever it is. So make sure there's the same output again by removing the blockages in the demand or supply. And how could you do that? If you follow the same prescription like IMF suggests, there's so many small nations, according to Joseph Stiglitz and as per observers, that it worsens the situation. The homegrown enterprises, small, medium size, they're completely wiped out. And the only way that you could perhaps help the situation is let them be around. You can let them be around by keeping your interest rates low, and for some time, maybe keeping your currency fixed to avoid devaluation. I don't want to get into a lot of intricate prescription, but it has been found, like Malaysia, when it had problems, economic crisis, it did not go to IMF because they did not see much sense in the prescription that IMF was giving to all countries in crisis. So what they did, they made their currency fixed. How did they do it? Mm, or they did not let their currency fall too much by currency intervention. That's when the country buys its own currency through global forex market, and that's how it appreciates it, to at least to an extent. The second thing is that it does not raise interest rates to a great extent, so that the small scale, medium scale, and to an extent large scale enterprises are not badly hit. Third thing, if there is shortage of resources, there has to be some level of cooperation in small nations amongst themselves. So they have to form some kind of an organization when they can provide the resources that's in shortage to each other in times of crisis. Um, so if and of course OPEC is the root cause. They could also give fuel at subsidized rate, or maybe give credit to people who are facing whose foreign debts are shooting up because of import bills. It has no dearth of money. OPEC can easily do that. Or else this organization, however many nations that have come together, let's say 7 8, there are 7 8 nations that have come together and formed an organization, an international organization of some island nations. They could build up an emergency fund that they could provide to each other. All right, I must talk about China here. China sometimes can be seen as a substitute for IMF because it also gives development loans to people. They give it on usually one condition, that they'll build infrastructure projects that will be built up by their country, by Chinese officials. Usually, People say that's because they want to get access to that country or build a corridor or something, but that's I just wanted to talk about it as a as an option. So similar things could be done by this organization, that each one could come in help of the country in crisis by starting some kind of a infrastructure uh, project, and be there for each other, and provide resources to whatever extent they can. And of course, still, economic crisis can never be avoided. It has been found that there's economic boom or good times usually last for 5 years, while economic downturn or recession, it usually self corrects itself in a it self corrects itself in a year's time, after which things get back to normal. And when everything is perfect, like in Japan's case, it is a manufacturing hub. Still, it has problems. It has faced problems because there was a supply chains problem. The demand was less for a few years, and they had a lot of uh, they had a lot of I don't know the word to use here. They had built up capacity, but they could not use it, they could not utilize it. But and uh, there were also bottlenecks in the supply chain, so they keep correcting themselves. So all these things, economic crisis is unavoidable. Thing is, small nations should come up together, like how Bangladesh's Dr. Yunus had suggested microfinancing. Help each other so that these big banks, when an individual takes loans from big banks, he finds himself stuck in this cycle of debt and default. That has to be avoided because things self correct themselves. Let it. All right, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about.